I got another head-to-head battle for you today. I got the Sony A7R5 versus the Sony A7S3. The S3, the king of video, the R5, the king of photo. But how do these two cameras stack up when you go head-to-head? The answer for video may not be as clear as you think. Let's go ahead and talk about these two cameras and why maybe the R5 might be a better video camera in 2023. All right, first let's start with the Sony A7R5. The R5 has a 61 megapixel sensor that can shoot up to 8K 24 frames per second at 420 10-bit. It can also shoot 4K up to 60 frames per second in 422 10-bit and 120 frames per second in 1080p at 420 8-bit. It also can shoot 16-bit RAW over HDMI. Downside with all these resolutions is the 8K and the 4K 60 are going to have a 1.24 crop, where the 24 and the 30p and 4K are going to have absolutely no crop. And the R5 is going to be able to shoot in APS-C mode, and that means that you're going to be able to get an extra 1.5 times crop on all of your lenses. Now the R5 does come with 8 stops of image stabilization, so you're going to get really nice stable footage. Downside is that this 61 megapixel sensor is going to give you a ton of rolling shutter as it tries to read out all 61 megapixels. Compare that to the Sony A7S III, which only has a 12 megapixel sensor, and this thing can shoot up to 4K 120 frames per second in 422 10-bit. That's using the full width of the 4K sensor with no downsampling or pixel bending. It can also shoot 16-bit RAW over HDMI, just like the R5, but it is only going to have 5.5 stops of image stabilization. There is almost zero rolling shutter because it's only reading a 12 megapixel sensor. Now, the R5 is going to downsample on this sensor to give you a sharper, cleaner, crisper 4K image. Now, the A7S III uses no downsampling, not unless you go into 1080p. Now, the image will come out just a little bit softer, but some people actually prefer that look over the super sharp, super crisp downsampled footage in the R5. Again, the R5 does have APS-C crop mode. This gives all your lenses a little extra reach. Now, when shooting in APS-C mode, it will downsample a 6.2K image down to 4K. So that means that the 4K in APS-C mode is still going to be sharper than the 4K coming out of the Sony A7S III. Now, the S3 has no APS-C crop mode. The only way that you're going to get an extra reach on your lens is to use clear image zoom. Both cameras do utilize clear image zoom to crop in a little bit further on the sensor without losing any image quality. Now, the R5 does have a trick up its sleeve. It does have something that no other Sony camera has to start 2023, and that is a 4-axis flip screen. It flips out, which makes it perfect for vlogging, so you can actually see yourself from in front of the camera. And then it also has the 4-axis tilt screen, so you can shoot different angles. And this screen can pretty much flip into any direction that you actually need it to go into to get the shot that you need. Also, another trick up the R5 sleeve is it has a 2 million dot LCD screen. Compare that to the Sony A7S III, and that only has a 1.44 million dot. It's definitely going to be a crisper image coming out of the R5 on the back of that screen, as it is going to utilize those extra dots. And the Sony A7S III, well, it just has a standard flip out screen. Now, we were all clamoring for these flip out screens a couple years ago, and we got it here on the Sony A7S III, but now that we have this 4-axis tilt screen on the Sony A7R5, that needs to be the go forward on all future cameras. If you're somebody like me who likes to check their focus using the EVF on both these cameras is going to be fantastic. You're going to have 9.4 million dots. It's going to be pretty much like looking out a window through both of these cameras. So if you need to go back, check footage, or even frame up your shot, the EVFs on both these cameras are fantastic. Now, the R5 has another trick up its sleeve. It's got that AI processing chip. Now, having that extra chip does allow the R5 to be able to move that autofocusing off its main chip. So for example, you register your face on the R5, even if you're in a huge crowd of people, it's going to find you, it's going to stick on you, and it's going to not let you go. So it's going to try and prioritize you. So if you're a wedding filmmaker, this feature is going to be dynamite, because you could register the bride and the groom, and you'll be able to make sure that they are always the centerpiece any video that you shoot. Now, you can register faces on the Sony A7S III, but it doesn't have the same stickiness as the R5. If you're looking for which one's going to be more lock solid for autofocus, the R5's got you covered. The A7S III has never let me down though, so I would not be afraid to use either one of these in a situation that calls for good autofocus. Now here's where the Sony A7S III catches up. The R5 does have dual ISO when shooting in S-Log3 at 800 and 2500. Now the Sony A7S III does have dual ISO as well at 640 and 12,800. And I can tell you, I shoot a lot of the video out of this camera at 12,800. Being able to shoot at 12,800 in S-Log3 does allow you to use S-Log3 more often in low light situations. I mean, the S3 can virtually see in the dark. Now both of them do have S-Cinetone. You are going to be able to get the same image quality and picture profile that you see in the FX3 and the FX6 and even the FX9. The 61 megapixel sensor in the R5, that doesn't do so great in low light. You can probably get away with going up to 12,800 ISO, but you will see some noise. The Sony A7S III, you can get all the way up to about 64,000 ISO before you're really going to start noticing the noise. And you can even go up over 100,000 ISO to really hit the shot if you absolutely need it. As far as low light beast goes, this is going to be your camera, and this is why most wedding videographers still use the Sony A7S III as their primary video camera. In most wedding situations, it's going to be poorly lit, so you're going to want a camera that can go up to high ISOs and keep that image as clean as possible. To sum this thing up, the R5 is a very capable photos camera. Hands down, one of the best photo cameras you can get, but it's also really good at video, as long as you shoot with a lot of light. That AI processing chip is a game changer, and when the Sony A7S IV comes out, I do expect that to be in there along with this new 4-axis tilt screen. The Sony A7S III is still the king of video. Hands down, best video camera out there. But if you're looking for a hybrid camera and you have about $4,000 to spend and you don't want to go with the S3, the R5 is an amazing choice and it's going to get the job done. You don't need the low light capabilities. I highly recommend this camera. If you want to learn more about either one of these cameras, I'll leave links right at the top of the description. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave those in the comments. And if you like this video, I'm sure you're going to like the video on the screen now. It's about another Sony camera. Before you leave, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Thanks for watching.